Well, the doctor's in the house. Dr. Lillian Nejad is here, clinical psychologist and founder. Here she is back again. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, thanks for having me, David. And nice to see you, Mike and Michael.
Well, I talk about worrying as a duplicative negative. Most people don't realize that worry is a form or fear of the future, but it's a duplicative negative in the sense that not only does it create interference between us and our potential, but it actually, in my belief system, manifests what we don't want. So, in the classic example that I utilize is when I was in law school, I could not figure out the rules of perpetuity, and I remember worrying for hours, if not days, weeks, and months. I hope the rules of perpetuity are not on my final. And in law school, you only take one final. You don't have any quizzes or tests. You have no idea what you've learned or not learned. And sure enough, the first question on my final exam was the rules of perpetuity because I had worried and interfered with my ability to learn it. But even worse, I manifested it. And then I did the same thing years later on the bar exam, and the exact same thing happened. So you created an app, the Worry app, to help with the duplicative negative and understanding how do we contain our brain.
So, as you know, David, I'm a clinical psychologist. So, we have a little bit of a different view in terms of what you just said about worry having the power to influence us in different ways.
So you
So, I
actually have
think,
a factual view, not a bullshit view like I've learned.
oh no, I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying
I
we
can
might be
say it.
aligned
Mike,
in
Mike,
some
you say
ways
it.
and not in other
Because she
ways.
can't say it, Mike. Just say, Dave, you're full of shit. But it sounds really good and people buy it. Is that
So,
right?
so the way that I think that we are aligned and agree is that our thoughts make a difference. So the way that psychologists would see that is that our thoughts influence our feelings, and therefore influence what we decide to do and what we actually do. So what we often do when we're helping people is we help them be more aware of their thoughts and their worries, and then really help people understand, well, how's that affecting your internal experiences? So how's it affecting how you feel, and how is it affecting your responses to particular situations and circumstances? So if we're talking about anxiety, is that thought about worrying about your test causing a whole lot of stress and anxiety, which means it's a lot harder for you to study, and so you're not as prepared as you would be for your test, for instance.
Would it be fair to say that you agree with the interference part of what I was saying, but you're not necessarily buying into the manifestation part of
Exactly. So
it?
manifestation's a bit problematic for people like
The
me
scientists,
because
yeah.
and I understand, and I'll tell you why it's problematic. The reason is because worries and anxiety is part of our natural thought processes. So we're actually wired to, our brains are wired, our minds wired, our bodies wired to protect us so that we survive. So it just means that we're going to be having lots of worries in our lives and anxiety in our lives because our body is wired to perceive threat. And so we don't want people thinking that those are unnatural thoughts that are going to cause bad things to happen. Because that's when I see the people in my office with anxiety disorders, for instance, or OCD or other problems that are similar to that. Part of it's because they think their thoughts are so powerful. And if they're spending a lot of time being depressed or anxious and having thoughts that are associated with that, and they think that they're then causing external events to occur or could cause external events to occur, that actually is not a helpful way of thinking. So we're actually trying to undo some of that idea of like our thoughts can create external events to occur, and rather focus on the fact that it can lead to internal experiences, and those are the things that we can change and we have control over, if that
So,
makes
yeah,
sense.
yeah.
Oh no, that's really yeah. And then
Talk
I
a
mean,
little.
go
Sorry.
ahead, Mike. I was going to say, in that context, if we believe in the perception and illusions that are created by the projection of our internal feelings as the information or materialization of an idea, that nothing is real. And I'm, obviously well read in some extreme bullshit from the past, from the Course in Miracles to the Bhagavad Gita to Eckhart Tolle and a variety of others, that
Sure.
there could be argued in science, a quantum argument in physics that we're just projecting forms into nothingness that would then actually support the argument that your reality is that of your perception. And if the way that we think is changing the way we feel, it's going to change the way we perceive things and mean things, and even in a quantum sense, form them. But I'm not going to go there, Mike, now that you're completely perplexed.
That's very
Mike quit using
esoteric.
drugs. Mike quit using drugs like so many years ago that he's not ready for this conversation.
I actually am.
Let's put
I'm
it back.
following you. I am following you because I would have gone into law of attraction and manifestation, and you manifested that reality. But the lesson would have been to learn what your intuition was telling you to learn and not create interference in the learning. So become
Yeah.
aware of your thoughts, going, I am triggered by this. So worrying, maybe I need to learn this. And then you open the paper and go, see, my intuition was telling me to focus in on what I needed to learn. And that's why it presented itself. So there was a lesson that you were getting from your survival mechanism, which was start of the sympathetic nervous system and your worry chain going, hey, maybe I'm running from this. Maybe I need to sit in this survival and figure it out. But what I want to ask you, Dr. Lillian, is this, is that, so you said thoughts, which is so important. And you know this, and we know this, that sometimes the sympathetic nervous system, our primitive part, is triggered by the environment. And we can be emotionally hijacked. So in the app, right, do you have something that not only works on the analytical part of the, the cognitive behavioral therapy of let's look at the thought, feeling, and action, that looks at the feeling and what the trigger is, and then we can slow those feelings down and get into those triggers and stop and understand what is triggering the worrying? Because like you said, you're always going to have some kind of fear. Fear is healthy. It's where we then place the fear.
Yes. So the app is based on a really simple strategy called Worry Time. And Worry Time was a strategy developed in the 80s. And it was actually developed by a group of researchers who were trying to help people with insomnia because they worked out. And I think that we all kind of know that worries are kind of what gets in the way of our sleep. So most people who have insomnia are struggling with getting to sleep or staying asleep because they're really stressed and their thoughts are racing and they just can't settle their minds down. So they came up with this idea of if you set aside a time and a place to worry that's convenient for you, and then you worry only in that time and in that place, then your worries aren't going to be hounding you all day, and they're not going to be hounding you just before you go to bed. You're going to, like, let's say if it's 5 to 5:30, I've decided my worry time is 5 to 5:30, then when worries pop in through the day, you write them in. So the old school ways, you write them down, right? So we created an app to make this process simpler. That was literally the only reason, because I just noticed my clients weren't going to want to write things down on little pieces of paper anymore. Yet this is an effective strategy. So like, how do I get them to use it? Well, if I make it really easy. So the app was just purely based on making it more accessible and easy to implement. So you set your timing in place. As worries occur during the day, you just add them in. And then during your worry time, we give people a really clear strategy on how to deal with their worries. So you can prioritize and highlight the ones that you want to work on, and then you choose one, and then we have you sort. So first you set, the next activity is you sort. So you sort them into categories. Is your problem or worry solvable? Or is it unsolvable? Or has it already solved itself? Because 80% of our worries, and maybe even more, by the time you get to your worry time, are no longer issues anymore. So once you actually categorize your worry, then you get some tips to deal with the worry from that category. So solvable, you get problem solving tips. If it's unsolvable, and I think this is where a lot of what you were, I think, alluding to, like you do need things to calm your body for all three of those things. So there's ways of dealing with your worries and your thoughts by the analytical, logical kind of realm. And there's also your body, like what can you do to calm your body so that you can make sure that frontal lobe starts working again so you can think about things to do. So we give people strategies like mindfulness, like relaxation exercises. Those strategies are suggested in the tips for the different kinds of problems depending on what category they choose. And then if they're solved already, then we actually have a tip for that too, which is we want people to reflect on all the worries and thoughts that they have that actually end up solving themselves. So that when they pop up again, they can say, oh, that's one of those ones that I have that usually solves itself. So I can just let that go, because by the time I get to worry time, it's not going to be a problem anymore. So yeah, so you get people to either solve, accept, or reflect on the individual worry, depending on what category it's from.
And those strategies are perfect for Mike Diamond, because any strategy in the 80s obviously is aligned with Mike's philosophy. For example, his hair strategy of the man bun, that's definitely from the 80s as well. So
was that 80s? I feel like it might be 90s.
This is hilarious.
Actually, he's so wrong.
About the 1480s. I was talking about the 1480s.
He's so dated. You know why? Because the man bun is a samurai thing.
Right.
That's where it really came from. So you are so dated, Dave. You're saying 80s. We're talking centuries ago.
Yes, 280s AD.
You guys are hilarious today. Pluto is in retrograde, as they say.
Pluto's in retrograde. Another Michael M. Broken.
Lillian, it's incredible. You've helped over 14,000 people work through your programs for anxiety and insomnia. I think rumination, especially in the world that we live in today, is probably destroying more people's dreams than anything.
Yeah.
Are there any commonalities that you've seen in your work that people can use and leverage as points of contact and proof for the potential for them to move towards their dreams without getting stuck in worry and anxiety?
I think the first step is to really have a good understanding of what worry and anxiety is and what the function of them are. Because I think that a lot of people get stuck in, oh no, I'm anxious. Oh no, I'm worried. That's really bad. That's really negative. That's going to cause all these terrible things to happen. If we can actually understand that those things are there to help us, they actually can serve a useful purpose to help alert us to threat and to help us solve our problems, then we're not judging it as bad or negative. What we are doing is maybe evaluating it. Is this functional or dysfunctional? Is this working for me or is this working against me? If we can have that understanding and start from that place, then we're in a much better position to move forward and do something that is going to help us. So I'd say have a good understanding of what anxiety is and what worry is and rumination is and why it's there. And then you have to, I think, understand the two ways of two broad ways of dealing with those things. One is the acceptance pathway, which is, what do I need to accept? What are the unsolvable things? What are the uncertainties of life that are just part of life? And I need to be able to tolerate that. And I need to be able to sit in feeling anxious or stressed or uncertain or confused sometimes. And it's okay to have those feelings. And mindfulness, for instance, can really help us do that in a non-judgmental way. And then the other ways, the change approaches, which are, how can I change how I feel? What can I do? Can I do a relaxation exercise? How can I change the way that I'm thinking? Can I use a tool like Contain Your Brain, or can I write my thoughts down and modify them so that they're more realistic and helpful and healthy? What can I do about my behaviors? What behaviors are contributing to this cycle of rumination or being stuck or procrastinating? Am I coping by avoiding all the time? Am I drinking and using substances? Am I isolating myself instead of getting help and talking to people? Like, what are the behaviors? And then also really understanding your circumstances as well. Like, what's going on in my life that's leading to a lot of distress and stress, and what can I do about that? Those are real too. Like, I think sometimes we can focus a lot and maybe overly on mindset and thoughts and how that affects everything. And I'm not saying it's not important. It is extremely important. But there are also really real circumstances that occur for people that cause problems and that can lead to being stuck. And you do need to just have that kind of knowledge and empathy that, sometimes you need more than just mindset. You need support. You need the right support and circumstances.
Well, everyone, Dr. Lillian Nejad. If you want to enjoy your life, excel at work, get rest when you need it to perform your best, to pursue your potential, contain your brain is a great way to do so. It's the Worry app that everyone can use in order to get out of their own way and allow yourself to enjoy the peace and happiness that we all are connected to and through. Dr. Lillian Nejad, thank you so much for joining us. Please, we got more shows for you. What a great interview. Thank you for your patience with our juvenile behavior, mostly
I
mine.
love it. Thanks for having me.
It's just life.
Exactly. You're amazing. Thank you so much. Go
Thanks
to
so much for having me.
containyourbrain.com. Take care.
Bye.
She's awesome.